Yo, Brad, I just pulled this sick number to 37 giraffe print oil slick rookie card last week. How much should I sell it for? Guys, I see questions like this in the comment section all the time, and so this video is all about offering up my 2 cents on your top 5 frequently asked questions, so y'all don't have to wait for my response and then perhaps get offended by my tan-colored fist bump emoji that I typically use. So let's dive right in. Welcome back. Now let's get to work. The first question is, should I sell my blah 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 card or wait? And this is a super tough question to answer because every card is different and everyone's strategy is different as well. For me, every card I have, there is a different thought process based on the player, the card, and the amount of copies I have, as well as what is out there as an alternative investment I could then roll my money into. Now, I actually did a video on this a while ago that you guys can check out, going over how I calculate these factors. But what I will say is that I used to want to buy at the very, very bottom and try to be that seller that sells at the very, very top. But for one, that's incredibly tough to do. And secondly, if you're selling it on eBay, there's a decent chance that the buyer who paid that record high price will try to claim that the card came damaged in order to weasel their way out of a crappy decision. Now, because of that, I would much rather get in very early and then get out somewhat early just to avoid that possibility altogether. For you, just ask yourself, am I content with this profit? What are the odds that this card climbs more in value, and what are the odds that it starts to go down? And lastly, if I cashed out now, is there another opportunity I believe in that is lower risk and higher reward than this one that I can roll my money into? From there, it's up to you. You know, we can't tell the future. We can just look at patterns of the past to get an idea of what we think the future will be like. And that's why I love studying the charts on Comp C and using market movers, because at least I can get an idea of how long a trend will last for and when people are looking to buy that card and what times of the year that they're not. The second question is, what cards should I get graded? And this is a very tough question to answer as well, because there are some very important trade-offs to consider. And I had actually written out this episode before PSA suspended most of their submission services and before SGC used April Fool's Day to announce that they were tripling their prices, and for us to only realize it wasn't a joke. Regardless, here is my thought process. Now, the first factor to consider is the condition of the card. And if you're new, you might not realize that getting a PSA 10 is not easy. And just because a card looks perfect to you does not mean it's going to be gem mint according to the grading companies, even if you pulled it directly from a pack a week ago. So if I take a card and look at it under a magnifying lamp, even if it looks perfect, it looks flawless, I'm still going to assume it's going to grade a PSA 9 and never a 10. The second factor to consider is the cost. And when I was first writing this out, PSA was still doing their bulk service. So I actually had my calculations written out based on $20 per card. And maybe they bring it back, maybe they don't, but regardless, it's important to do the math ahead of time. Look at what 10s and 9s have sold for in the past, and then think of what the player's value could be when you finally get it back from grading, which could be 3 months, 6 months, or a year out, depending on what service you get. The next factor is perhaps the biggest one, and that is opportunity cost. And that's because your card is going to be locked up for at least several months, but maybe a year or longer, hopefully no longer than a year, but you never know. So if you could sell that card raw today and make a small profit, you can then turn that profit over a few times if you know what you're doing, which could be a lot more money in your pocket, a lot more profitable, and a lot less risky than waiting until the card comes back. Remember, a lot can happen to a player over 9 months' time, and you might get your card back a week after they snap their ankle. And if you had just sold the card raw when he was peaking or when there was hype around him, you would have made a lot more profit than if it came back a PSA 9 or maybe even a PSA 10 after a horrific injury or after 27 women accused the guy of sexual harassment. Honestly though, at this point, grading is something I just don't care to do much of anymore. As many of you guys may know, I sent in a lot of Kobe Bryant and Tom Brady cards under the bulk submission service late last year, knowing that I'll be fine if it takes a year or more, because I was also paying $10 or $12 per card, so the downside was very low. But moving forward, I'll probably only grade cards that I feel have a great chance of getting a Gem Mint 10, and that I feel confident that the player's career or their legacy will be in a better spot in a year's time than it is now. Or if I'm willing to pay $300, then it needs to be some card that is easily worth an extra $400 to $500, even if it grades a PSA 9 over the raw sales price. All right, the next question is, where is the best place to sell my cards? And I actually did a video on this a couple months ago, but honestly, it's wherever makes most sense to you. Now for me, at this point, raw cards work well on ComC because they do the majority of the work, and they also cross-list it on eBay, which is something that wouldn't be worth the effort for a lot of these $5 to $50 cards. Now for active player rookie cards that are in pristine condition, I would go with StarStock, and that's because they look over your cards when you send them in, and then they assign them a grade from A to C based on the condition. A being the best, C being the worst. Now, as you can imagine, StarStock A level cards typically sell for a lot more than B and C level cards. So if the card has a soft corner or a micro scratch, I'd rather send it into ComC, where it would probably sell for more than if it was stuck in the StarStock B or C category. As for graded cards or higher end cards, I list mine on eBay under Buy It Now with accepting offers. And I like that because I could throw it up in a few minutes at a really high price. And if someone is willing to pay for it, then that's great. But if not, I could still entertain offers that are worth looking at. And then I can also sell it locally and then just take the listing down whenever I want. And since I live here in LA and there is just a huge card market here, I'll be looking to sell and buy a lot more locally. But the ability to have it on hand for a local transaction and to be able to sell it online at a pretty high price is a win-win in my book. Next up is, how much should I sell my number to 149 unicorn vomit parallel of blah 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 whatever player? Well, if you know me, you know that prior sales data is very important to my investing decisions. I use it a lot, but the tough thing with rare cards and all these crazy parallels out there now are that sales data is either missing or just not recent enough to accurately represent the value of the card today. So if there is not recent sales data for that card, what I would do is, one, see if there's recent sales showing how much a comparable player sold for in that same card. And if you can't find that, see how much another player sold for in that card, and then compare your player to that other player throughout their cards. An example would be comparing Zion Williamson to Ja Morant. And if Zion's cards are selling for 3 times what Ja's cards are, and assuming the pop report is similar, and the latest unicorn vomit Zion sold for $300, then $100 could be a pretty fair assessment for your Ja card. But no matter how you do this, there really is no perfect way to price the card. It's more of an art than a science. So instead of searching for the perfect price, I would just do this background research to get an idea of what is reasonable, and then I'd list it on eBay with a buy it now of, like, let's say $170 with accepting offers, and then make sure the only offers that get through are the ones that I'll entertain because it's an amount I'm happy with. So if $100 seems reasonable, maybe $170 is the buy it now price, and then maybe you can get $130 or $140 for it. And then if it doesn't sell in a couple weeks, then you might consider lowering the price. But to me, that's one of the best ways of just seeing what the market actually values the card as. If it sells instantly, then you maybe had it a bit too low. But if it is on the market for 2 months straight and no one's even watching it, then maybe it's time to lower the price. But that's a good way of gauging it, in my opinion. Hey Brad, do you think player blah 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 is a good buy? Here's the thing. If you ask me about NBA players besides LeBron James or one of the other top 5, top 10 players, I can almost guarantee you that you know more about them than me. Now, if you ask me about American football, I may have some solid insight, but regardless, here is my answer based on how I operate. First, what do the charts show? If the guy is recovering from a recent dip in prices, I'm interested. If not, I'd much rather wait. Is this a rookie? If so, I'd rather wait a year for all the product to be out and for the pop report from PSA to be at least somewhat filled out. And if the season is currently going on, I would rather wait until the off season, or at least there needs to be a lot of season left and the team needs to be good enough that they'll probably make the playoffs for me to be interested. Lastly, and probably most importantly, do I have 3 reasons why I believe this player's value could climb besides their actual performance on the court or on the field? For example, if they're entering free agency and could find another team, that's one upside. If they're on a crappy team, but the team has a lot of money to spend or a high draft pick, then that's another upside. And if they are returning from an injury, like a prior injury, that would be another. But I want at least a couple insurance policies in place so that if my original theory doesn't pan out, I still have a plan B and a plan C. I do not want to rely on just them playing really well in the next couple months. Now, these were just some rapid fire answers to questions that deserve, to be honest, a lot more thought based on you and your situation. And I believe it's always helpful to get multiple perspectives so you can come up with the right answer for yourself. So in this video up here, Dustin, aka Collecting Dustin, answered the exact same questions. So click on the video to check it out, and then make sure to tell him Saints suck in the comment section of his video. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.